Hi guys, Jimmy McIntyre here and welcome to this Photoshop Secrets tutorial. Today we're going to look at how we can restore highlights and shadows in a single JPEG in Photoshop. Now usually we work with RAW files because they have a vast amount of information from which we can pull our shadows and highlights and end up with a nicely balanced image. Or we use multiple exposures for an even cleaner effect. But if you only have a single JPEG to work with, there are ways in which we can control our shadows and highlights to some degree. And I'm going to show you one of those techniques now. So to begin with, we open up a brand new layer, then we choose our paint bucket tool, and we set our foreground to black by pressing this button here. Now I want to try and restore some of these highlights in my image and maybe get some color back in this area too. So I'm going to do that by painting this layer black. Now I go to the blend mode of this layer and change it to soft light. Now we need to blend this into our exposure, and we can do that by creating a layer mask, making this image invisible. I'm going to Image, Apply Image, and using the same settings as mine, and pressing OK. Now you can see we've applied a mask to our new layer, and this is what the mask looks like, and it's basically built around our main exposure here. But if we make this layer visible, we'll see that it's affecting most of the image. And we only want to affect the highlights, so we need to make this mask more specific. And we can do that a number of ways, but here we're just going to make sure the mask's selected and go to Image, Apply Image, and just do the same thing again. And we'll repeat the process one more time. So now we can see, if we press Alt or Option on a Mac, we can see we have a more specific mask targeting just the highlights. And if we make this visible, we can see our highlights are softened now and we've pulled some information back in those areas. Now to strengthen the effect, we just press Ctrl and J or Command and J on a Mac, and we bring the opacity down until we're happy. I'm going to bring it down to around 50%, and then I'm going to group these layers so we can see before and after. This is before we brought back the highlights, and this is after. And you can see we're not affecting the foreground. Now Raya Pro users, we can do this very easily if we just delete this layer, and I'll delete this mask too. All we need to do is make this layer invisible, go to Raya Pro and choose Dark 3. Once we've done that, we can make the layer visible and press Ctrl and J or Command and J to duplicate the layer and just reduce the opacity again. And that's it. A very quick process. Now we can also do the same thing for darker tones in our images. If we have an image like this which is underexposed, to brighten it up we can open up a new layer, make sure our foreground is set to white this time, paint on our new layer, change that blend mode to soft light. Now to blend this we can either create a mask, make it invisible, and go back to Image, Apply Image, but this time press Invert and that'll invert our mask, targeting just the shadows. Or an even quicker process is to double click on this layer, go to Blend If, hold down Ctrl and Alt or Command and Option on a Mac, and just snap this arrow in half and bring it all the way down and press OK. And when that's done, we just need to bring the opacity of this layer all the way down, let's say to around 60%. And now we've restored the shadows in our image. And if we zoom in, we'll see that there isn't a great deal of noise or color noise being added during that process. Now this does depend on the scene and the quality of the file that you're working with. If it's an extremely dark scene and you're working with a low quality JPEG file, then you'll probably see a lot of noise and color noise. So be careful about how you use this. Ultimately, it's always better to bracket and definitely better to shoot in RAW. But if you do only have JPEGs, there is still hope. And I hope you found this tutorial useful. If you have, feel free to comment or subscribe to my YouTube tutorial. Thank you very much and have a nice day.